The left continue to play down the attempts on Donald Trump's life, and they're continuing their dangerous, inflammatory rhetoric, trying to paint the former president as evil, a modern-day Hitler, a threat to democracy, and worse. Here is White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre earlier today.
President Biden has been clear-eyed about the threat that the former president represents to our democracy. He's been clear-eyed about that.
Joining me now is Critical Dynamics Director of Law Enforcement Training, Keith Hansen. Keith, thank you for your time. Is the rhetoric we are hearing from the Democrats directly responsible for the attempts on Donald Trump's life?
No. I mean, it's completely disconnected. I mean, we're all intelligent enough to know, especially the mentally defective people, the leftists of the United States are certainly smart enough to understand that, we're dealing with an intellectually superior class here. So they speak in metaphors that the average person just can't really understand. So when they talk about crosshairs, they're not really talking about rifle crosshairs. And when they call him Hitler, they're not really implying that, he's responsible for the death of 6 million people. We just can't comprehend. And you remember, it was Nancy Pelosi who said about Barack Obama, he's so intelligent that the vast majority of us really cannot begin to grasp or appreciate the depths of his intelligence. So I think it's just us, sub-intellectual peons that are just, misinterpreting the words of these incredibly intelligent leaders and acting unaccordingly. So there's no connection there at all. Sorry for the sarcasm.
The fact that the suspect. I appreciate the sarcasm.
But it's one of those things. Like we have to at least take a sarcastic approach to this here, because I mean the truth of the matter is that this is vile, this is reprehensible, it is evil. And yes, to answer your question in a very serious way, I do believe that the Democrats and the progressive left in the United States is directly responsible for the uptick in violence. And this has been going on. This inflammatory, incendiary, violent rhetoric has been going on since Donald Trump first descended that elevator or escalator in the Trump Tower in 2015. He has been targeted. He has been slandered. He has been maligned. He has been threatened. And the mentally defective left in this country takes that as a direct marching order. We've seen it once in Butler Township. We've seen it twice in Florida. And I have to be honest with you, unless we really start getting serious about protecting this man and other representatives, elected representatives in this country or candidates, we're going to see a lot more of this.
Well, I fear what would happen to the country if one of these attempts was successful. The suspect in this second assassination attempt has social media posts that are word for word what we are hearing from the Democrat leadership, just supporting what you've just said about this rhetoric and how it can inflame people who are not mentally sound. And the talk has not stopped. It's in fact, they're doubling down on it. Does that make you fear that another attempt on President Trump's life is just around the corner?
Unfortunately, yes. I think the answer to that is yes. And more to the point, I think that there's a lot of people who look at this as a game. I'm seeing, a lot of memes and a lot of cartoons and a lot of not coming from President Trump, but, coming from Trump's supporters. Hey, 0-2, as if to say, oh, you tried twice and failed twice. It's going to become, I believe, a situation, unless it's taken seriously at the highest levels of government. It's going to become a situation where somebody is going to try to be the person who actually is successful. And they may spend the rest of their life in prison or they may die, but, they will have achieved what nobody else has done. And perhaps they're looking at it as some type of act of humanitarianism where they're going to save the world. Or again, it's just a mentally defective person. But it sets up a very dangerous stage where somebody will try to do this. And again, I've said this many times, that the Secret Service and all of the force multiplying agencies that are involved in protecting not only President Trump, but Vice President Vance, or President, a little wishful thinking there, but the nominee Vance, as well as the current president and vice president, unless they start taking this seriously, we're facing a very, very serious crisis here. And we cannot, again, we cannot turn away from the fact that the rhetoric from the Democrat Party and the progressive left in this country is absolutely fueling this.
If you were advising the former president, would you be insisting he wear a bulletproof vest at all times, every time he's out of Mar-a-Lago, essentially? And how would you handle the rallies, the meets and greets he does? And of course, he does like a game of golf. Can he be adequately protected when you do have, well, you've had 8 years of this crazy rhetoric that, and God knows how many people are out there who've got ideas about being the one to take him out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, each individual venue, each individual rally, each individual appearance, each individual visit to the golf course in a non-official capacity presents a very unique security threat. Clearly, the threat is elevated. We've had not one attempt, but now 2 attempts. He is arguably the most targeted person in this country, perhaps even the world. And so, yeah, the security protocols have to be reviewed individually. And the bottom line is that, yeah, I mean, he should be wearing a vest. He should be limiting the exposure that he has until he can have some reasonable assurance that the people who are tasked with his safety and security actually have their game together. And to be honest with you, looking at a Secret Service that is filled with DEI hires, courtesy of people like Kimberly Cheadle and the rest of the Obama administration and the Biden administration, I would have serious doubts about the ability of many of these people to adequately protect any dignitary.
Well, yeah, we saw the scenes in Butler, and some of those agents seem to be completely lost and unfit for the job, to say the least. The media rhetoric around Trump, I think, is also adding fuel to the fire. It's not just the Democrats, it's the media who have normalised this sort of talk and promoted it. And our publications in Australia, I've got to tell you, are not much better. You could argue they're worse. I want to just bring to your attention an academic publication, The Conversation. They have a piece at the moment claiming these attempts on Trump's life are nothing out of the ordinary in US presidential history, calling them fairly commonplace, despite also noting that the last attempt was in 1981 against Republican President Ronald Reagan. That was 6 presidents ago. You're security experts. How extraordinary are the threats against Donald Trump? Is this what every presidential candidate can expect, or are we seeing something that's quite out of the ordinary?
I think we're experiencing something that is significantly out of the ordinary because we're dealing with an individual who is out of the ordinary. This is a person who is extremely polarizing. People, for whatever reason, either love him or they hate him. And the people who hate him, the media in this country has made it, they've literally built their ranks off of covering Trump nonstop. I mean, think about Twitter. Back when Twitter was 140 characters, Trump could reach out with Twitter and literally stop the presses. Oh my God, there's a lot of pearl clutching. Oh my God, Trump tweeted something or Trump said something. And I think Trump is really one of the first people, real powerful people in this country who has defined, or I should say defied, the standard paradigm, which is you make your statements through the media. But Trump knew that he couldn't trust the media, that the media was corrupt. The media was pushing an agenda. They had this hegemonic view of the United States, and it did not involve conservative principles. It did not involve capitalism. It involved the furthering of these progressive, democratic, socialist policies. And anything that stands in stark contrast to that worldview will be treated as a pejorative. It will be put down. It will be suppressed. It will be belittled. It will be made fun of. And, you know, the one thing that I've said many times, Rita, is that when a Democrat makes an accusation towards an opponent, you can absolutely take it to the bank that it is a twisted, projected confession, that the person who utters the accusation is they themselves representing a political body and an ideology that is guilty of far worse things than anything they're accusing their political opponents of. This is standard practice. For people who have an iota of critical thinking, we look at this and we take everything in through that lens. But unfortunately, the public education system in this country has bred a generation, several generations of politically, socially, and economically illiterate people. And so these people take it at face value. Hell, in this country, how many people are getting their news from 15 and 20-second segments and blurbs on TikTok, which is arguably populated by the stupidest human beings on the planet? And these people not only fill our society, but here's the scary thing. They vote and they breed and they produce more stupid people who go out and vote for the first person who comes along and promises them whatever little treat that happens to tickle their fancy. Welcome to the world of American politics. It's not getting any better. It's only getting worse. And now that the violence is ramping up, literally, because the calls for violence are ramping up, I think this is kind of the, to coin a phrase from COVID, the new normal. It's scary, but it's true.
Well, I think everything you've said points to the fact that this is going to be the most consequential election we have seen in a very long time. Keith Hansen, thank you so much for your time this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rita.